As a 40-something who spends more time than most editing photo and video of my own face, I have also probably thought about my own face and my aging more than most people my age have. Because it really seemed like the second I turned 40, the whole trend online was all anti-aging everything. There was a mad rush to have a 12-step daily routine with monthly injectables wherein you also totally villainize the sun and never go so much as near a window without a Korean sunscreen with a high-strength filter. And if you were somebody who had committed the unforgivable sin of looking over 25 on the internet, your comments were full of children saying,
"Oh my god, you look like 40 or something. Why don't you like go to a clinic, get some Botox?"
And I admit, I am not usually swayed by what other people think about myself and my face and things of that nature, but even I was swayed by some of the pots and potions that are constantly being advertised on the TikTok shop. And very recently I found myself drooling over this $300 skincare device that promised that it was going to help my skin absorb its moisturizer better, which is a problem that I've always had. Moisturizer, regardless of what type, regardless of what I do, it just sits on top of the surface. It never goes into my skin. So I'm like, oh, this is finally the device that will solve this problem that I have had my entire life. And then I saw the videos from people that had gotten that device and had had nerve irritation because of that device. And as somebody who has had problems with my face nerves before, I am so glad I didn't waste $300 on that device. It probably would have been not so good times for my face parts. And realistically, the more I got in my head about it all, the more I got in my head about aging and products and all of these things, the more I kind of entered into a freeze state and I didn't do anything at all. And I'm kind of glad that I actually did enter into that freeze state, because I don't know that I would have done good things to my face if I would have made those decisions in the heat of that moment. And as I started to come out of that freeze state, I started seeing more and more videos about the damage of fillers, the damage of Botox, things along those lines. Talk about how the fillers stay around longer than we think, even the dissolvable ones, and how they absorb more liquid than we think, and that's why so many people get pillow face. And it's easy to just say, oh, just go to a knowledgeable injector, but also when you have famous, rich, well-connected women getting extraordinarily obvious and poor quality filler work, I don't know how you can be confident that you're not going to end up in their footsteps. So let's discuss my thoughts on aging, my thoughts on my face, why I'm making the decisions I'm making, things along those lines. Because I want to present another alternative, right? You don't have to see aging as something that you have to fight against, kicking and screaming, you have to spend a fortune for. Like, they want you to feel like your own face, your natural face, the way that your face is going to age is not good enough so that you will spend a fortune on all their products because you feel terrible about yourself. But regardless of what your face looks like, it is good enough. We have this very toxic ideology about how there's like one type of correct or appropriate face and you're not allowed to age and you're not allowed to look anything older than 25 even if you're 65, things along those lines. And that has made us demonize and villainize so many things that are actually healthy and normal parts of life, like smiling and laughing and things along those lines. Like the number of people that I see that are like, oh, I don't smile in pictures because I don't want to have smile lines. I don't ever frown because I don't want to have frown lines, things along those nature. You are preventing yourself from experiencing the full array of human emotion just so you can avoid a couple of lines on your face. So let's discuss my plan a little bit. So I have rosacea, as many of you can probably tell. I bet since I'm under lights right now, my face is red. When I first started making a lot of videos, my rosacea was something I really wanted to combat because I didn't want to look like that in my videos. So a lot of times when I first started out, I did a lot of Sims videos. I did a lot of face cams that were very small. I would really heavily blow out the colors on them so you couldn't tell that my skin was pink. Like there were a lot of things that I would do to try and hide my rosacea. There were times when when my flares were bad, when I had a lot of pimples from my rosacea, I wouldn't film at all, and it really made me feel like I was being held hostage by my own skin. I do not like the feeling of stuff on my skin, and I also have very sensitive skin. In fact, most of the time in the past when I have tried to cover my skin with makeup to hide the rosacea, it has only resulted in making the rosacea worse. I have not found any makeup, foundation, corrective cream type things that I can put on my skin to hide the pinkness while I am filming that does not also have the reaction of making my skin more pink when I take it off. And I've tried a number of foundations, I've tried a number of cleansers, and realistically at this point in my life, I am so sick and tired of this belief that rosacea is bad and you should cover it and get rid of it, but then next step in your routine, as soon as you get rid of all the redness in your face, is to put it right back there with blush. It is very frustrating to me that artificial redness is accepted, like even if it's bright, bright, bright ass pink, even if you are tomato red because of your blush, that is acceptable. But if somebody has like a lupus rash, or if somebody has a rosacea rash, that is a skin condition that you need to cover, because ew, gross, how dare you be seen in public with a skin condition. I also have an elderly pet parrot that sleeps on my face a lot. She has plucked feathers from a lot of regions of her body, and that means that her skin, her very thin bird skin, is subjected to all of the things that are on my face. We do not test moisture and foundation and retinols and all of those things on sensitive bird skin, like for good reason. Like I don't want them to test things on birds like that, so we know those things. But also, I don't want to just assume that those things are safe to be touching my bird because they're against my face. Because if they have any type of active ingredient, that is going to be dosed significantly higher than a bird would possibly need. Even if it's something that's a vitamin that is healthy for her, it is probably dosed at a point that is not healthy for the bird. And so I've gotten to the point where I do not put anything on my face that I am not confident can touch my bird, which means during the day, if my face is looking bright red, if I want to add moisture to my face, what have you, the only thing that I will allow myself to put on my face is rose water. And rose water, to be fair, it does help a lot. It does help a lot with moisture. It does help a lot with redness. It can't necessarily help with the redness that I get from the lights, but it can help with the redness that I get in normal day-to-day life situations. And so things like hand cream, things like moisturizer, things like lip products, all of those things are things that I do not put on until after the bird goes to bed at like 2 a.m., whenever that happens to be. And I try to wash it off first thing in the morning before she gets up and before she's spending time on my face and things of that nature. It is more important to me to have an elderly bird that is still alive and still healthy and still with me than it is important to have a perfect complexion. And I think it really worries me the number of people that put all sorts of cocktails on their skin and then rub their faces all up on their animals. I really am concerned about the number of people that'll put like plumping lip gloss on and then will kiss their animals, because that stuff stings our skin. I also personally hate sunscreen. I especially hate American sunscreen. I am especially pissed that we can't get the good Korean sunscreens anymore, because whilst I didn't love them on my skin, they were at least a lot better and they didn't sting. Like basically every single American sunscreen stings the crap out of my face and my eyes, and a lot of times if I sweat even the slightest bit, it reactivates it, so it's like an all-day burn. It's not just when I'm putting the stuff on. Again, I don't want it to touch my bird, so basically every time I put sunscreen on my face, I have to scrub the crap out of my face but before I come in and snuggle up with my bird and things of that nature. And because of that, I refuse to wear sunscreen every day. And I know so many people are going to attack me for this. Like I do, if I'm going to spend more than 15 minutes to a half an hour out at a time, I wear a lot of clothing that has UV protective factor. Basically every time that I'm outside, I have a wide brimmed hat on, and I think wide brimmed hats are the next revolution, the next thing that we need to bring back for a lot of reasons, but for the passive sun protection, it is unparalleled. Like, obviously, it is not completely protecting my face the way sunscreen would, and if I'm going to be out in the garden for a few hours, I do put, like, real sunscreen on, even though I hate every second of it. But for the most part, if I'm just gonna be out for 15 minutes, I put on a hat. If I'm gonna be out for, like, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, I'll put on, like, a UV protective gaiter. I'll make sure that I have long sleeves on, things of that nature. And very often, when I am in the garden for a long period of time, I do wear like an actual KN95 face mask because I'm allergic to the outside. And one of the things that I found during 2020 was that if I garden with a face mask on, I don't have to deal with nearly the level of sinus congestion afterwards. And in fact, if I wear goggles too, then I don't have to deal with like the runny eyes and all of that like runny mess that I usually have in the garden. So like there's actually some benefits to, instead of using sunscreen, just physically covering your face, because there are other benefits that face coverings provide when you're outside that just sunscreen simply can't. I cannot slather myself in sunscreen just to prevent a little bit of aging anymore. Like this idea that I need to have sunscreen on at all times to prevent fine lines. I am 40 years old. I am going to have fine lines. That is just something that I accept. I'm going to have lines from smiling because blessedly, as much as my life has had some really incredibly sucky parts, my life has also had a lot of points of joy. And my face is a map of all this. My face is a map of all of the things that I have been through, and it frustrates me the way people can just casually throw that away. And also just more broadly, like I want to normalize this idea that you can be online with less than perfect skin. It does frustrate me that so many of the people that get famous on YouTube and TikTok and things like that immediately start wearing like a lot of makeup, a lot of foundation, foundation for every single video, such that it gives off this impression that all of these commentators, like not even just beauty channels, like all of the commentators have perfect skin. Like everybody on the internet everywhere has perfect skin. People with skin issues should not have to cover those skin issues up with things that very often make those skin issues worse just to be presentable for the internet, and I want to give people some reassurance of that. Nowadays, I really try to film, like, even when I've got pimples, even when I've got dry skin areas, even when I've got like weirdness going on in my face, I try to film because I know that there are going to be people that see my channel, they're like, oh wow, I've never seen anybody with rosacea, like just existing with rosacea before. And also, just like as a lesbian growing up in the 80s, like there were not that many older lesbians like as examples in my life. There were very few like older LGBTQ people at all as examples in my life. For me, especially as someone who grew up during the AIDS epidemic and who didn't realize at the time just how much our numbers had been decimated by it, it is so important for me to exist as an openly queer elder on the internet. It is so important to me to be that example that I did not have as a child, especially because of the fact that like I live with my family. I love my family. I get along great with my family. And there's very often this belief that if you come out as a lesbian, you're going to get rejected by your family and you're not going to have support. And yes, that is absolutely true in some families, but that is not always the case. Like there are tons of LGBTQ people who either the families that they were born into, they have love there, or if they don't have love in that family they were born into, they go out and they find family. Found family is such an important concept to LGBTQ community, and just like community as a whole and visible community. Like it is so important for me to be visibly queer. It is so important for me to be visibly older as a queer person for those reasons. So many of us had our lives shortened by factors outside of our control. Because I am allowed to get older as a queer person, it is important for me to represent that, because so many people have the belief that that's not the case. Throughout most of my early life, clothing was about showing off my body, right? Clothing was about showing off my body such that men would notice me and men would approve of me, because that societally is what women should want, right? When I really started focusing more on myself, a lot more of my fashion was about like clothes that didn't really show off my body so much, but clothes that showed off the things that I like, my hobbies, my interests, things of that nature. Throughout my early time online, a lot of my photos were things that were close up on my body, showed my body's silhouette, showed my form, showed my face, things really up close. And now that I'm older, I'm kind of seeing myself in the things that I wear more as like an art piece. I see things like silhouettes and shapes of a garment being part of the attraction or interesting value of them. I really like experimenting with color. I really like having a lot of different imagery like animals and nature and things along those lines, so people who see me, who see pictures of me, will know who I am inside, not be able to visibly tell my bra size just from looking at a single picture of me, you know? I'm going to very gently discuss weight for a couple of minutes. If you don't want to hear that today, skip down to the timestamp below. For many years, I was just naturally skinny, and if I didn't do anything, I would be skinny. And the reason for that was because I had severe digestive issues that I was not treating, because I thought it was more important to be skinny than it was to be healthy. And as a result of that, I spent all of my time in pain. I spent all of my time cold. It is not physically comfortable to be underweight all the time. You are always dizzy, you are always cold, you are always sore because you don't have any padding on you. And so many of those things went away when I actually started treating my digestive issues and being okay with the fact that I wasn't going to be a size 00, XXS if I took those medications. And now that I'm taking probiotics, and now that I'm actually able to keep weight on, now that I'm actually able to eat 3 meals a day, I actually have strength and energy again. Like obviously I'm still going through burnout and still recovering from all of that and things of that nature, but at the same time, I am so much better off than I was for many years when I was just starving myself effectively, because it was in my head that it was more important to be skinny than healthy, because skinny was the most important factor that indicated health, right? Even though I would show up at my doctor's office like underweight, I very briefly managed to get like above a healthy weight and lost that very quickly, and that really should have been evidence that there was something going on with my digestion, some problem that caused me to put on a lot of weight and then immediately lose a lot of that weight. But the medical professionals that I saw were so like, I don't know, jealous. I genuinely don't know what was going through her head when she told me that I should be happy that I lost 60 pounds in 2 months, because that's not an indicator of health in any regard. And one of the big things that I really struggled with when I was underweight is the fact that if I got a stomach bug, if I had food poisoning, if I had a day when I worked through my meals and I didn't realize it, the next day or the next couple of days, I would feel absolutely like crap because I had no reserve to operate off of. Now that I have a couple extra pounds around the middle, that ensures that if something goes wrong, if I don't eat for whatever reason, I am not literally starving. There is a reserve to work off of. And like, it is so frustrating to me that so many people view health as having like no possible fat to burn off. Like, there are always going to be situations where you're not necessarily going to be able to eat. At least for me. Maybe this is just something that I think about because I get stomach issues all the time. But I need to have I need to have enough extra pounds to be able to have at least one bout of food poisoning a month or something along those lines, right? And just in general, I feel the focus on being really skinny, especially for women, is really just so, if you're concerned with your own weight all of the time, you cannot possibly be concerned with what other people are doing, how other people are treating you wrong, how other people are taking advantage of you, how the system is taking advantage of you. You are just focused on how you can get rid of weight or how you can eat less calories. All of these things keep you focused on something that isn't your own actual survival. The patriarchy wants us skinny and frail and concerned with our own weight, so we do not notice how we are being mistreated, and if we do notice, we cannot fight back. Let's talk more about Botox and fillers. Personally, one of the things that I am most glad that I have never done with my face is Botox and fillers. I don't have a problem with other people doing it. I have tons of friends who have gotten Botox and have gotten fillers, and the results have been pretty good and things along those lines. That said, I have seen a tremendous volume of people that even if they got good results, you have Botox face. Like, if you get more than a little bit of Botox in like 1 or 2 sections, your face stops emoting at the natural points where it usually emotes, and it wrinkles other places. Like, that's what they're finding with Botox is like, sure, you won't have like your 11s, but you'll just have face wrinkles other places. It's like anything that you don't stiffen with your face will start to be the things that you emote with. And like, if I wear too much makeup, if I have really thick brows, or if I have like really overdrawn lips, I do not look like myself, and it gives me like massive dysphoria. I cannot stand my face looking too far off what it's supposed to look like. Unless like there's a vision that I put together in my brain, and like then I embrace that vision, and like it's a very temporary thing. And I also see a lot of people that talk about regretting Botox, regretting fillers, all of these things. Like, they feel like there was a point where it was working well for them when they just got a couple of things done at the beginning, but like it becomes a whack-a-mole maintenance type thing, and the more you maintain it, the further you kind of deviate from what like your normal look is supposed to be. A couple of my friends had gotten fillers, or they gotten Botox, or even they had gotten minor surgical procedures before they had children, and now that they don't have the same facial features as their children, and like they're trying to explain, oh, mommy had your nose, but I got rid of it with filler because I didn't like the way it looked. Like, it's a hard conversation to have with their children, and it's one that they're like rethinking. A lot of people get Botox, get filler, get cosmetic procedures, get surgery, and all of these things before they have children, and they're not really even thinking about like, how will I explain to my child the fact that they inherited a feature that I hated so much that I changed, I think many procedures are overhyped and under-researched. I think broadly we do not know the long-term impacts of doing these things, especially to the quantities and the extent that a lot of people are doing filler and Botox and things of that nature. And I especially hate how normalized it's become in acting, especially amongst actresses, because actresses do not emote normally anymore. I saw a really good TikTok recently that was like Anne Hathaway's crying face before she did Botox, and then Anne Hathaway's crying scenes after she did Botox. I have said for a while that like modern TV, modern film just does not engage my brain the same way, and I have always fixated on CGI as being a big component of that. But now that I'm thinking about it more, now that I'm also realizing that like reality TV and stuff doesn't vibe with me, I'm realizing that like my brain needs natural face emoting in order to be engaged. Like, in order for me to have like that emotional catharsis, to have that same emotional outputting that I'm supposed to be getting, I need the actors and actresses' faces to actually look like they're emoting for for real, like real actual human emotions, and very few of them are anymore. And I honestly wonder how much that is hurting normal people outside of acting, right? Because a lot of times when our friend tells us, oh yeah, I'm doing okay, the reason we know that they're not okay is because we'll see like their little eyebrows quirk up. There'll be little micro expressions that are kind of conveying the fact that they're not okay. And absolutely, there are tons of us that live in scenarios where nobody notices our micro expressions, and that's a different problem. But also, like, I think a lot of us are getting rid of the micro expressions that communicate to other people how we feel and what our moment is and things of that nature. And especially when you're considering like raising kids and bringing up kids, and like you're supposed to act happy when they're showing you their new art and things like that, but is your face conveying that the way that you would like to be? If they're telling you a sad story and you're crying, are they like, oh, mommy's fake crying? Like, I really wonder how people, especially people that have gotten a lot of Botox and a lot of filler and a lot of cosmetic procedures, how well they communicate with their kids nonverbally. So much communication is nonverbal, and we really don't think about that nearly enough. I am a very emotive person. Like, one of the big reasons that I'm so against Botox is because, like, I have a variety of ways of conveying, like obviously my body language, my voice goes, like I am very loud when I'm excited about something, but I don't ever want to get to the point where my body language is excited and my volume is going up, but my face is just a Joker mask, you know? And I think one thing that really hurts us, especially people that present more femme, is the fact that we don't have a lot of good examples of natural aging anymore. Most of the faces we see most of the time are people that are famous, that have artificially halted their aging in one way or another. Like, there was an era where actresses were aging normally and were still in films. And yes, absolutely, they got less roles and they got crappier roles, and that was a problem in and of itself. But at least back then we had examples of what older women looked like. And one of the things that has really helped me is making sure that I'm not just following like a bunch of older women and a bunch of older people in general. It's like people across a huge range of ages as well. Like, I'm making sure that the faces that I'm looking at are not necessarily white faces, not necessarily faces that fit the beauty standards, not necessarily the faces that society wants us to look at, but the normal type of faces that normal people that you run into on the street have. And that has really helped me like reassign what I find is normal, what I find is beautiful. And I think one of the most interesting things is the more I look at just normal women who are allowed to age, the more I look at like Nicole Kidman and other women that have had a lot of cosmetic procedures, and they don't look real to me. They look like dolls. They look so fake. I think a lot of us can benefit from diversifying what we look at and diversifying what we find is normal and what we find is attractive. And like, just for me, like as a lesbian, it's just exciting finding like all of these new and exciting ways to find women attractive. Like, there are just so many beautiful women out there. And like, I was conditioned to believe that the only type of beauty that existed in women was like very specific type. And that hurt me a lot when I was trying to figure out that I was a lesbian, because like, it wasn't really what my brain wanted. It was just what my brain had been tricked into thinking that it wanted. But when I really started just interacting, especially just being on Zoom calls and things like that with other women my age that just had a variety of different face sizes and shapes and colors and all of these different things, it really diversified my ideas of what I found beautiful. You don't have to look hard for people that have natural faces. You don't have to look hard to find alternate types of beauty. You just can't passively accept the things that are fed to you by your feed or your For You page or things like that. You have to actually go looking for the people that are aging gracefully, the people that are aging kind of normally. But one thing that was also really beneficial to me is I've been looking into a lot of Katharine Hepburn, a lot of the actresses from her era, and the ways that they started presenting themselves as they aged. Like, I love Katharine Hepburn's style as she got older and older, especially the way she embraced a lot of masculine styles and things of that nature. I really love how she was allowed to be considered to be beautiful even when she was an older woman. Like, if Katharine Hepburn was alive today, I honestly wonder what a lot of people would think about her. But Meryl Streep is a really good example. Like, she is an actress who is so powerful in her acting ability that she has not had to do too much effing around with her face. And she's one of the most beautiful people. I love Tilda Swinton. She's a terrible human being, but she's a very beautiful human being. And I think it's also more than just physical. It's more than what people look like. It's seeing how they live their lives, because so very often the images that we get of women is women that are in service to their families or their friends or the men in their lives. That is the women that we see in media. We don't see as many women who are just out there authentically living their lives as themselves, but there are tons of women like that on the social media feed. Like, one of the most important things about social media is using it as a tool that helps you, not a tool that hurts you. If you just accept the things that it wants to feed you and you don't really try to dig for like the kernels of gold that are buried in the crap, you just get this one kind of ideal, this one kind of beauty standard, this one kind of expectation. But in reality, there is so much more there just under the surface. You just have to look a little bit further. And I think the problem is so many of us want to treat social media as something that we just mindlessly consume because we have so much fatigue from all of the other decision making. But that's why I pay a lot of attention to who I follow. When I have the ability to do so, I look at the following feed, not the For You feed in various social media apps. I try to the best of my ability to control what I'm fed, and when they're feeding me stuff that isn't what I want, I scroll away fast so they don't think that they can convince me to want that again. And like I said, it's about all aspects of your life. Like, especially if you're somebody who is a parent right now, what do you want your life to look like after you're done being a parent? Broadly, the way we as people know what's possible for us is by what we see other people doing. So if we don't see other people just happily existing as themselves in their older faces, in their older bodies, things of that nature, we don't have any idea of what a normal older woman looks like. It's just completely filled by this like Hallmark media kind of presentation of what we're supposed to be at those ages. And I do watch a lot of Golden Girls too. Like, Golden Girls isn't perfect, but it is women that are allowed to have older faces, that are allowed to still go out and have agency and have male partners and things of that nature, even though they're older. And what frustrates me is like a lot of why Golden Girls works is the strength of the acting there. And I just think about today, if we had like a modern Golden Girls, it would probably be a bunch of women that had a lot of procedures done, women that didn't necessarily look the golden age. And I think they would probably play around like that, like, oh, hey, we don't have to look like Betty White or what have you, but like, Betty White owned her body, even looking like a full grandma, like full grandma'd out. Betty White still owned her body, she still owned her sexuality, things of that nature. Like, I love her. I don't think it is a problem that Betty White looked old through a lot of her career, because she freaking owned it better than most young people ever could. And a lot of what I've been trying to do is just figure out, what does my future look like? What hobbies and interests and passions are just for me, and how can I pursue them as I age? Like, one of the things I really want to work harder on is learning more fiber crafts, learning embroidery and things along those lines, because I want to be good at them once I'm grandma age, you know? And I really think it does help to have a journal. Like, what does your idea of your future as you age look like? What makes you happy? What do you want to have that in that future? And what can you do now to work towards that future? A lot of times we don't have this idea of who our future self is, so we really can't plan to make their future life easier. And that's something that a lot of us can start trying to do. I'm very curious what people think. Let me know down below what your aging plan is, all of that jazz. I'm curious to hear what people have to say. My name is AerinMoriarty, and after closeting and then glass closeting for many years to ensure my financial and physical safety and stability, I have finally come out and made appreciating women my literal job. I talk a lot about Taylor Swift and other pop stars, especially from a sapphic lens, so if any of that interests you, please give me a follow. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions really do help me out a lot as a smaller channel. Thank you so very much, and bye-bye.